Yeah. Like, hello.
No pressure.
Yeah.
I don't want to screw up, I am already, so. And I guess when we talk, we kind of want to be close there.
Yeah.
Right.
So are we ready? Okay, hello everyone. Hello everyone. This session is These Canoes Carry Culture. And I'm really excited to have three of the movers and shakers in this project presenting with me. To my left is David Deloso, who created the interactive website that you're going to take a look at. Next to him is Maya Mojica, who has created one of the blogs and worked producing more of the written material that appears on the website. And then next to her is Koji Taylor, who worked on the video and also put a lot of sweat equity into actually constructing the canoe with Wayne Vallier. To give you a little bit of background, last fall, Northwestern, through the Center for Native American and Indigenous Research, brought Wayne Vallier, a Lac du Flambeau tribal member and a master canoe builder, one of perhaps 5 master canoe builder, birch bark canoe builders left in North America. He was here with us for 3 weeks, and along with students and staff and faculty and community members, because I recognize some of you worked on this as well. We built a birch bark canoe and then launched it in Lake Michigan on a very windy, maybe launched isn't we dipped it. And Koji has the wet jeans to prove it. It actually went in the water, but it was just a fierce day. It was cold and windy and rainy, and so the canoe went in, but it came back up pretty quickly. I teach Native American environmental issues in the media class in the fall, and so this was just such a perfect opportunity to create a class project around this canoe building. Normally, students stay in their own wheelhouse, whatever major they are, and do a final project that connects Native Americans, environmentalists, and media. In this case, it was a class project and everybody worked on an aspect of this interactive website that David Deloso is going to tell us about. So here's David.
Hi, everyone. Like Patty said, my name's David, and I developed the website that you're looking at now. I'll try my best to talk to the Zoom and the room at the same time. And so my work really focuses on the ways that journalism can be transformed and like stories can be told differently through digital media. So we built this website that's separated into 5 parts. One is just the articles that Maya will speak about later. One is the video that Koji's going to talk about. It's a little laggy because of the Zoom. We made some podcasts. And the part that I really focused on was these interactives. So once we saw the canoe and we saw how just amazing it looked in person, we really wanted to capture that and like preserve it in some ways so that even if you never step foot at Northwestern's campus, you could get an idea of it. So hopefully this works. Takes a while to load. So using my iPhone, I made a 3D model of the canoe, which was a fun experience. Using a technique called it's called photogrammetry, where you basically just take pictures of the entire like 360 view of the canoe. And so yeah, we made this model that you can interact with. It doesn't work super well on a phone, but on your laptop it should work fine. So yeah, we really just wanted to make it tangible and just like really replicate the experience of just like seeing this beautiful canoe in person. Obviously, it's not the same on a computer screen as it is when you're actually there, but we think it got pretty close. So I'm going to go back. Hopefully, if I can. We have to go full screen. So that was one of the interactive things that I built. The other was this, which hopefully will work. And so, yeah, I'm gonna turn the volume off here. There we go. Okay. So, okay, you can still hear some feedback. Sorry. I think you just turned. I think you mute. Let me turn the volume down.
All right, so I'm Maya. The articles probably won't generate as many views and ahs as David's interactives, but I do think that they're a really essential and really fun part of the project to work on. So the way we kind of approached how we were going to divide up articles and divide up what the most important parts of the story were to be told was really interesting, because we started and we were like, maybe we'll have one big article kind of telling the whole story of Wayne, the canoe, the history. And we realized once we started talking to Wayne, once we started doing interviews of people who were working on the canoe, that there's just too much information to put in one article that one person's gonna read. So from there, we decided to break it out into 5 or 6 like subsection articles. And so the article that I worked on was kind of like an overall summary. So for someone who, you know, came on the website, just wanted to know the gist. So I incorporated, you know, Wayne's own experience, the actual experience building the canoe, what it meant for Northwestern. It was a really fun article to write, because Wayne is such a good storyteller, so interviewing him is like a journalist's dream because he gives so much detail. And then from there, I think we realized how important other little aspects that you might like not pick up as being the central element of the story, how important it was to tell those. So we looked at the historical context, the colonial erasure that went behind the kind of history of the canoe building, which Q worked on, and which is like a really brilliant and important story to be able to tell the history. It's not just something that's obviously happening in a moment without any other context occurring around it. We told stories about the apprentices who are working to learn from Wayne to become the next generation of British art canoe builders and kind of carry on that tradition, which was a really fascinating and cool story. There's a story on Wayne himself, kind of really profiling and digging into him. I think could have written a book on him. It's so fascinating and wonderful to work with him. We have this canoe building 101 story, which I know Natalie had a lot of fun working on to kind of basically explain to someone who has no idea how a canoe is built, the intricacies of how it is built. And that took some research into physics and like things that a lot of us as journalists hadn't really like explored before. So it was definitely also an experience of us gaining new knowledge. And it was really fun because not only were we getting to work with a great subject, but we were also, it was a very collaborative environment. And I think that's something you don't often get to experience when you're doing written form. So we all wrote these individual stories, but when it came time to kind of edit and send them to David to upload to the website, what we did is we kind of traded stories. We all traded each other's stories. We all read through each other's. We all offered language edits, but also like sort of subject matter edits based on whatever aspect of the canoe building process we were focused on. So I thought that was something really cool that we were able to use our own knowledge and areas of expertise that we gathered over the way to help and support each other. So I thought that was like a really good experience that I want to bring with me into other journalism projects. And something else that I want to talk about that we did, which this wasn't my specific section, but is incredible to see how it came together, was the podcasts that we had some team members work on. Basically, the way that the podcast team went about creating these little miniature podcasts that told different stories from the textual articles and from the video that Koji's going to talk about, is they approached it through the lens of taking a name or a term or something about the canoe and then using that to explore a specific theme, which I thought was a really like creative way in. So obviously, please listen to them on the website on your own, but I'm gonna play a little clip from one that Montserrat worked on. production, so it really sounds like a professional level podcast, which is really awesome. And so speaking of the emotion that like sound is able to carry, I'm gonna pass it over to Koji to talk about the videos.
Hi, everybody. I'm Koji. Yeah, so I worked on the video specifically with a couple other folks from the class, Kayla, Eddie, and Georgia. I think it was all of us except for Kayla had no experience in shooting film or editing video or anything like that. But with the subject matter that we were handed so serendipitously, I feel like there was no way we could have gone wrong. Like I said, Wayne was pretty fantastic to talk to, had tons of stories, tons of wisdom to share. And the subject of the video itself, the canoe build, was pretty spectacular. I've been lucky enough to work with craftspeople for a lot of my life, work in wood shops. But the things that Wayne was working on and the methods that he was using were things that I had never seen before. And hopefully the audience of this video has never seen before. I think we'll play a little bit of it off the top and then I'll stop it a little bit through and talk about what's happening.
I think I'm going to play most.
a lot of time with Wayne. I think we actually, the project had a lot of media attention, local and national, around. And there were a lot of really busy days with big professional film crews that were there shooting around, talking to Wayne. I know he was running around from interviews and everything, but one thing that we were lucky to have that they weren't was to be on the same campus as him as the whole build happened. You know, we were there on the first day, getting test footage when they were building the tables that they built it on, you know, and then we were there on the last day with the launch and everything. And I think through that, we were able to build like really important relationships with Wayne and the apprentices, everybody around him, and really get a more intimate view of the build of the canoe, what it meant to him, and try to put that into the story. I think one thing that came up for me on this watching was just how deeply integrated water is to the entire process. Like obviously we're here building a canoe, a vessel in water, but water was also so much a part of the build. You know, you saw at the beginning in the bathroom. That was one of the early days when I knew this was going to be an interesting time. Was when I walked by the bathrooms in the bottom of the art building, and there was just like puddles of water, like all leaking, like on the floor, like out the door, everywhere. And I was like, "What's going on here?" And I went in, and it was Jeffrey in there with the big roll of birch bark, trying to put it in this big trash can full of water because you have to soak it all to get it soft. Yeah, and that's when I kind of understood. I was like, all right, this is going to be, there's some interesting things going on here. But the same was true of like pine root, you know, which you saw Wayne using to stitch the canoe together. Everything was soaked in water and treated. And then the water was really used to form these materials, you know, and turn them into what we wanted to use them for. And it was also a nice opportunity to really, I don't know if I would call it like more humanistic or naturalistic, like woodworking craftsmanship, but like I was definitely educated in terms of like my relationship with the materials, you know, like so much work had gone in the project even before it showed up on Northwestern's campus. You know, Wayne said that they had been collecting materials for, I think, a year by then, getting winter bark from the birch trees in the winter and then getting the summer bark too, because there's a certain difference in the layer and where you would use it in the construction in order to keep it waterproof. Going into the cedar forests to get those planks, which were all carved down by hand. And then also to understand like there's a giving of thanks in that trade with the earth and with the materials that we use. You know, there's a recognition that the land and the natural world is providing for us, you know, and then there's gratitude given there, which is definitely something that I've been thinking about on campus. I work in a really big wood shop that has everything you could possibly want or need, you know, so that's definitely something that's been a key lesson for me. Yeah, and we talked a lot about collaboration and the people around and the community built through this, and to me, like that was such a key part of the art, and it was in one sense like art in itself. Having every time I would come over, whether at first it was just to film or take photos or whatever, like there would always be familiar faces there working. There would always be new people there working on the canoe. Wayne, every crafts person is particular on how they want it to be done, and Wayne was definitely particular, but at the same time very welcoming and open and like looking for folks to do work and share hands and would help folks along and working on that. And yeah, like every time I would come over, there would be new people there working on something, things going on that you would never see in that space. You know, this is the basement floor of the big art building on campus. We're used to seeing, you know, like student paintings on walls or like sculptures out of cardboard and whatnot. And here was this giant exhibit essentially with all these like natural materials everywhere, wood shavings, dust, lichen all over the ground. Definitely disruptive in a way, but you got to see people from the community, other students who might just pass by and catch a little interest and then eventually be worked in. Getting involved and trying out things that they've never done before and building connections, like Wayne said. Yeah, when I first showed up, I was there just to shoot video. And I remember at first like Wayne kind of like, like doing his thing, but then eventually like kind of noticed me, and eventually like there was room for me to get on the team and like work out one day. And I think I was helping with the lashings on the sides of the boat. And the more I came, the more invited in I was. And toward the end, like I was working to put the ribs in. I remember that one day we were all out there pouring water on those cedar ribs and then fitting them in there and getting the planks underneath. That was a whole process that really did require all 6 or 7 of us. But yeah, and throughout, like I know I learned a lot in terms of how things can be constructed and what you can construct with people. And I guess I could talk about the launch. That was a pretty special morning. We all got up pretty early to be there. I think everybody was there except for Wayne at the camp. I think we were all ready with cameras waiting and all that at like 6 or 7 a.m. and then he showed up right on his time. And yeah, we had the drumming and the singing and speech from Wayne, and carried the canoe out as you saw, and got to dip it in Lake Michigan. I was lucky enough to be part of that. And yeah, got our legs a little wet, got the canoe a little wet, felt right to put some water on it. And yeah, and stood there and took some photos, and that was that. I know the canoe now. It's been sitting in the sailing center for a minute, at least by the water, but there are efforts to get it in more public view, ideally in the Siegel Visitor Center, where all the visitors on campus come through, and prospective students and all that. And yeah, I mean, maybe this is a little too honest, but I think it's definitely something that I love to have represent our school, and sometimes I wonder if our school is worthy of that, being that representation, but either way, I know like all of this wouldn't have happened if not for all the ingredients, all the people coming together at the right moment. And it required a lot of hard work from folks at CNAIR. It required a lot of hard work from Wayne and his crew and everybody else around. So in that, like at the very least, like I can be grateful. I'm grateful this got built. I'm grateful there was space for it. I'm grateful I got to be a part of it, and make friends along the way.
There's one last piece of it, the photo timeline. You want to show them that? Nice job, you guys. This is why experiential learning is so important, and as an educator, to hear how people process what they've learned and what they'll take away from it. I mean, definitely makes me remember why I'm an educator. For me, I'm Anishinaabe, and so the moment that canoe went in, and I'm a journalism historian, so my tribe, along with Potawatomi and Odawa, were forced to give up the land that became Evanston and Chicago in the 2 treaties, the last Treaty of Chicago in 1833. And I couldn't, that morning I was so emotional just thinking about the fact that it's probably been since then that an Anishinaabe canoe was launched off that site. And, so the messiness, the shavings, the water, the pieces of bark on the floor that Pam and I were cleaning up at 10 o'clock in the evenings. Decolonization is kind of a messy business, but in the best way possible, in this project. This is the last of the elements of this website that I really hope that you'll explore, because there's a lot there. This is a timeline, and students that were interested in photojournalism worked on documenting and chronicling the process. So you see the canoe being made through this timeline with a short description. And it was really nice because, journalists have have a lot of interest, first of all, and it was great to get them on a project like this. But they also have different, areas of comfort. So there's students that are more pulled toward writing. There are students that are more visual. There are students that are computer engineers as well. And by the way, David has graduated and now is designing websites for the first newspapers. And Maya is graduating, and who knows what, we don't know what. Third year? Yeah, third year. So he'll be around for another. But everybody, is pulled in different directions. So there are people that are pulled more toward infographics and timelines like this and photojournal. And so what was really wonderful about this interactive website that David designed is that it was a place where students could really explore an area of comfort or explore a new area that they wanted to learn more about. Koji, you said you didn't have any experience with video, right? But you wanted to learn, and this was a really great experience for you because there were people on your team that had more experience who were willing to help teach you, some of the basics. So I'm really proud of this project, and as some of you may know, I'm retiring next year, and this is probably one of the last classes that I will have taught. And so this was really great to go out on a bang, right? Worked on the canoe. Forrest, I'd really be interested in hearing your perspective, what it felt like to work on a project like this, because you were there a lot.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of like how, you and Koji were saying, it was like a lot of work, a lot of like messy, messy, long nights, but really rewarding, not just like from seeing the canoe, but also like the community that kind of like came, like I haven't met you before that, Koji. I just remember like, you were just like some random guy who was like helping like pound wood planks and I was like, who is this guy? And then like, I don't know, we kind of just like talked that evening and then I'd see you the next day and again. And yeah, kind of like built that relationship over time. It was also really cool, like being there in the summer when we got to harvest. I know a few of us, we went up to Flambeau and kind of harvested birch bark and some of the, oh man, I'm forgetting the spruce root, knot tub. The spruce root.
The pitch.
Yeah. The roots.
The roots.
That was a lot of work. That was like, man, that was yeah. You have that. So yeah, I mean, just like being out on the land and like everything that like we did, like every little like, I don't even really want to call them tasks, but like, like whether it's like pulling up the spruce root or like tying the lashings down or like sewing like the pieces of the bark, or putting the planks in, like there was every single step along the way to building that canoe. There was some kind of teaching in there or something that Wayne would share that had like a deeper meaning. And so it wasn't just like crafting a canoe. Like I think the title of this talk, like these canoes carry culture, is like really just like perfect because like every single component had like a deeper meaning and like a deeper teaching. That wasn't just about the canoe, it was about like life and just like being in general. And I feel like that's what Indigenous knowledge is all about. So yeah, just really beautiful.
I was so excited to see the language component in it because, we all know our languages are endangered, but as you say, there's so much in each description. The front of the canoe in Ojibwe is the future. The back of the canoe in Ojibwe Moan is the past. The name of the birch bark that's kissed relates to when you're finished and you've got the pitch and you've sealed it. You think to see if there's any air coming through, because then it's not airtight. There are just all these really beautiful descriptions in the language, and so that is such a critical component to this, which was just really cool. And I'm just I will eternally be grateful to you, and I know Wayne is really grateful to you too, because he's using that as a teaching tool. You know, that you were able to use your wizardry and make that happen. Pam, is there, you know, this was a project that took a lot of your time with Senior.
You know, I mean, I think I should say I cried.
Yeah, me too.
We went up to the little like Fumble, my grandbabies were there. They were out with their little hats and their mosquito nets. Little city slippers. But just watching how even they were carrying the little branches and throwing them in the back of the truck, just proud. Grandmas had their lawn chairs set up doing the work that they could do, and the younger ones with the physical ability were out, you know, pulling the hard stuff. So watching that, and then something Wayne said, I hope it comes out in one of these pieces. I think it just said the spirits remember us. So even if we've been missing from that shoreline,
Yeah,
they remember us.
the spirits are happy that we're back. And it really is a, you know, I mean, to me, it really did feel very much like a decolonizing kind of project.
That's the only other thing I would add is that there were very, very difficult moments of trying to figure out how to do this in such a complex space. You know, there were definitely some people barriers that didn't care or were inflexible. But there were other, just the way that we built spaces to work on things was not conducive. We had to boil how much water and run these propane tanks continuously. We had to find spaces that we could actually pour hot water or, you know, put pitch on without damaging our property. You know,
And we got intimately comfortable with Home Depot. I can tell you everything on aisle 66 and 67, 64-gallon drums, and cap on one, you know, on aisle 64.
I think I got my P card was suspended. Yeah. So I think we were $1.17, but I just didn't do it right. Yeah. So it was, and then things we just didn't anticipate, and I can tell you the moments where it just, my heart felt very heavy that we were asking so much of that team from our reservation on our behalf, and they worked literally till they left. I mean, there were times where the fingers were bleeding and that they were wore out, starting, you know, from the morning going until those 10 o'clock nights. So I don't know, we slept food, we did. You know, Patty and I were teasing about our high-ranking status as we were schlepping them off on the flooding down the hallway at Weinberg so that we wouldn't get kicked out of President. So just some of these things were very hard to do.
And there were people that showed up, you know, Native high school students for whom this project was really meaningful. Grandmas that came, you know, to help sew the seams inside of the canoe. There was a non-native woman from La Crosse who drove 3.5 hours to come and work for 3 hours on the canoe one night, and then drove back that same night. And it really drew, yeah, it really drew a lot of people to it. You know, I mean, there was just this intrinsic goodness about this project, I think. And I had myself a really good cry that morning.
The ripple effect, I mean, how often, Patty, would you say journalism you get, what was it, 2.5 minutes on national?
Oh, yeah, I mean, Koji alluded to that. There were 17 stories, 6 or 7 of them in television that, you know, front page on the Chicago Tribune. CBS National News did a feature story on it. So it was, you know, it was a really proud moment for our Native community, but it was also really a good moment for Northwestern. And, you know, I'll remember what the question you asked about whether this university is was a good one. You know, I don't, we kind of ignored the Zoom people, and we have like, sorry, Zoom people, if you're joining us, if anybody has any questions, we still have about 10 minutes left in this session. Or no, actually, it's 50 minutes, isn't it? So 7. We
So
have
what
a-
happens next? Can you all tell us that?
Or if you guys have any questions?
Well, I guess like, I know, so I'll be presenting in this room, the next section, so stick around. But so like I work on, it's called ISTEAM, it's the Indigenous Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, Mathematics. It's like a science camp, and it's like science education from a Native perspective. And so we've been talking about ways, because we've been focusing on like learning about water and what it means to learn about water from an Indigenous perspective. And we just thought that we were thinking of ways that we would like honor this canoe, this gift that was given to us. And so we've been talking about we want to try to incorporate like learning about like our waterways, like how we used to always like travel by canoe, like through the rivers in Chicago. And you know, like kind of incorporating that in. So on May 22nd, we're hoping to have a community co-design circle, where community co-designers, people who, you know, we ask community members to come and dream up like what's possible and what we want for our community to learn, like how do we want our community to thrive. So on the 22nd, we're going to come together, and it's going to be on campus, and we want to do something to honor this canoe. So whether it's, I know the canoe still needs like some birch bark etchings on it. I would love to like get canoes out onto the lake. We'll see, like, you know, pending the weather and like the water conditions. I think that'll be a game time decision, but yeah, so we just want to carry this work forward into, because this canoe is a relative, right? It's like, it's a living being. And so we don't just want it to sit in a building like idly by as like an exhibit, right? Like we want to, it needs to be out in the water. Yeah, the canoe needs to be out in the water. It wants to be in the water. So we want to do that.
Well said, well said. Yeah, this is not an OJ to art. Do we have any questions from our, no? Yes.
I know you said there was some curriculum on this. Is it on the website? Is this something I could use in high school or elementary school to just kind of have younger people connect to this more in an interactive way, other than just going and looking at the canoe? Is there, I mean, I'm sure I could Google lessons on the importance of water, but is there something that has been developed for that purpose?
We have not developed a curriculum around the canoe. We do have a curriculum developed around our Indigenous tour of Northwestern, which I think is in the last stages of, I think Jennifer has finished it, and yeah. If you don't know, we have an Indigenous tour of Northwestern beginning at the Siegel Visitor Center. There's a website, there's a virtual tour online. You can explore that way. But we also, if you go to the Siegel Center and download an app called Echoes, it will take you on a GPS guided walking tour where you can learn about Carlos Montezuma, who was the first Native American man to get a medical license. It'll take you to a place where you can learn about the floor, basketball floor in our Wells Ryan Arena that came from the Menominee Forest. You can learn about the 1903 football game between the Carlisle Indians, including people like Jim Thorpe and Northwestern. So there's a lot of really kind of interesting, some of it disturbing, some of it really joyful, where Native American history, people and places intersect with our.
Is this a part of the tour now?
It should be, shouldn't it? Yeah, we gotta
It's
figure out where to, once it gets its permanent place, maybe at the Siegel Visitor Center, we'll swap out the photo on the first page of the tour.
And if you don't mind, I mean, I don't have any problem saying, we're getting a lot of pushback from the university.
Yeah.
What they didn't see though. They have a lot of, they're just unresponsive and they haven't even met with us to discuss their no. It was just no. And so I think we have to figure out a campaign to push it back and say, look, this deserves that prominent spot. And, you know, and at least tell us what your worries are. We came up with it. We have the money to support it. We have the money to build the exhibit. We have the money to maintain it. I don't understand why they're telling us no.
They're here.
So we may be launching some sort of put out your Northwestern protest poncho.
I think for me, I just really quickly, I think just as a community, you know, member, but also as a Native mom, as somebody that sits in Native leadership in the community, I think what's most appreciative about this beautiful project was the decolonizing of spaces. I think Northwestern, and Erin mentioned it earlier to me, Northwestern houses the largest Indigenous amount of college students, you know, on their campus. Like that's a big deal. Decolonizing these spaces piece by piece, and I think the work that CNAIR is doing, you know, the work that you've been doing, you know, throughout all this time, and just mentoring these students and watching them thrive and really help bring those voices and incorporating community and really giving those voices. I think that was really important. I think it was a really good experience for our young folks who aren't yet in college, right? But I think, you know, when we get these young kids from all over the country who are now sitting on Indigenous land at a colonized, you know, university, how do we teach them how to decolonize the space? And I think this project is exactly how you did that. And I think it opened the door, like Pam said, for all the multiple ways that you can continue to do that and push and show our students and our young folks how to continue to push those boundaries of continuing to decolonize, you know, secondary education and colleges and universities and lands. I mean, we're much bigger than a land acknowledgement and a check in a box. And so projects like this, I think, are really, really important. And so I just, as a community member, I say thank you, Miigwech. This was a beautiful project to, you know, even just to see, even from, you know, all the way back here. It was a great, great project. So congratulations to all of you.
For those of you on Zoom, that was Melody Cerna, who's the executive director of the American Indian Center of Chicago. So, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. So I think we're done. And thank you.
There's a UR.
In your program, you'll find a QR code at the top of the session information. That's where you can fill out a survey. We would love your feedback on your experience at the conference and the session. So if you want to use the QR code to find the survey, that's where you'll do it.
And what's that? What are you holding?
Once you fill that out, you get a wrap ticket. Take 1 minute, fill it out. If you need the URL code, Erin has it right here.
Oh, yeah.
And there is a free Wi-Fi if you're not getting service. It's just,
Turn the page. It's on one of the sessions.
it's on the snap. Wait.
I think it's the same for
Okay.
the same QR code.
Patty, is the iteration of the web page that you showed today, is that the iteration you have or has it been changed? Okay, that's it.
Is it this one?